Hello, everyone. I am Jose Betancourt, and with me I have John. How you doing, John?
Hey, Jose.
What's happening? And Jeffrey.
Hey, Jose. Hey, John.
So you're
Hey.
listening to Cheese, a photography podcast, and as we ended last week's podcast with John, actually Jeffrey talking about his method for putting out photos. Since John is mainly a landscape photographer, he's been posting themes like basically every month on Facebook. So I really want to. I'm really interested in speaking to him in that regards, how he goes through that entire process and how he comes up with these themes and then follows through. So,
Yeah,
John, let's start off with that immediately. Just give us a rundown of what you're doing with your landscape photography on Facebook.
Jose, are you asking John or Jeffrey?
I mean, Jeffrey, sorry.
Jeff, if you want me to speak on your behalf, I have no problem.
Go right ahead. That's
Too many
great.
J's.
No.
Too many J's.
Yeah. So I when I first started on Facebook, I think I had 10, 15 friends. It was my wife, my mother-in-law, a couple of distant relatives, and a couple of coworkers. And I would post a photo, and maybe somebody 3, 4, or 5 days later might click like, kind of thing. And
Yeah.
And I had no approach. I didn't know what I was doing at all. I really wasn't involved in any groups. And so then I started to decide, let's get involved in a couple of groups and start to expand your network, really, of people that you connect to share the same passion as you. And let me qualify this. This isn't about how many likes you get or don't get kind of thing. It's about the quality of the work that you do, and it's about engagement. It's about networking. It's about being supportive and appreciating other people's work. So I want to clarify that. And when I say friends, I mean, that's a relative term, isn't it? We can define that in any way possible. I would consider the two of you friends. We actually connect like this, but I have lots of people out there that might reply or respond to a photo that I don't know anything about them per se, but we're friends because we're in the same group idea. Mm-hmm. So anyways, I was randomly posting photos and there was no approach. I just would throw one up and I had no idea what I was really doing. And so then I decided, I really need a focus to help get me grounded in terms of how I'm going about this. And I came up with the idea of a monthly theme. And I used to be pretty religious about posting every Sunday, Tuesday, Friday, Sunday, Tuesday, Friday. But then I kind of switched and I moved to where I was trying to post every, say 2, 3, 4 days. And then, I would choose the days. It just depended on, what was going on with work and family and that kind of stuff. So I set out to kind of, choose a theme for myself of photos I knew and I had in the collection, but also opportunities I had. So I picked themes that are relevant to the kinds of stuff that I'm interested in. I did one on bridges. I did one on trees. I did one on the Great Smoky Mountains. I did one on leading lines. And so that helped me have a focus in terms of what I was doing. Well, all that to say, I also made a decision a long time ago, and this was kind of controversial, and I really thought people would bite back at me. If you liked one of my photos, I decided I would send you a friend request. And I really debated about how people would respond to that, because I thought people might be suspicious or wonder what you're up to, that kind of thing. And that's how my network really grew over time. And I can tell you today, I can count on one hand the amount of people who have kind of, suspiciously responded to me and said, I don't know who you are, leave me alone, don't bother me kind of thing after all of that time. And my network has grown to just around almost 3,300 friends from that initial 10 or 15 people. So it's been interesting to see that. I've had along the way, as I've done these monthly themes, I've had people download my photos and edit them and stick them back up and say, doesn't this look better than the one that you did? I've had people tell me it's oversaturated or it's too dark, or, the texture is wrong. I've had, lots and lots of stuff like that along the way, and I just thank people for their feedback. But all of that to say, having a theme just really gives me an opportunity to kind of focus my thoughts for a month period of time. And if I'm doing it every couple of days, I need to have a minimum of 10 photos during that month and a maximum of around 15 15. So if I could 10 to 15 photos around that theme in a given time, whether I take them or I have them in my collection, that's really helped me be grounded. So I upload a photo, I send it to my Weather Snaps page, and then I enter that same photo with the same text into nearly every group that I'm a part of. I always include a description, location, and the settings because people want to know that kind of stuff. My wife often says, where was that photo taken of so-and-so? They see it and they have no idea. So I always try to include that information in the description. So anyways, that's been my approach for the last couple of years, and it's really helped me to be grounded, but also to be focused, but also to expand my network and connect with a lot of other people who have also mimicked that or inquired about that over time. So
that sounds great, man. And, you know, you've been very consistent. And has there been a moment where you kind of lost focus and wind up posting different themes in the middle of the month?
Yeah. I've had a moment where I set out on a theme and I thought, I probably have enough photos in my collection. And then when it comes time to do it, I go, oh, that's really not very good. Don't post that thing. So I've had a few of those, but, I've been at this probably not quite 2 years, 18 months doing themes. And, for the most part, it's just helped me to stay focused. I've had times where I've wondered, am I doing the right theme for this because of the timing? Maybe I got really busy or whatever, that kind of stuff. So right now, today's April, so I started a new theme. It's at home. There's not many places to go right now to take photos aside around the house. So everything inside and outside the house, that's going to be the focus for this month, for the month of April. Yeah.
So how do you store all of these photos? Do you have a specific folder on your computer with a separate hard drive? Do you have like a backup? Do you pay for a backup service?
Yeah,
any
absolutely.
Of those?
Yeah. So all of those actually. So I take photos, I bring them into Lightroom, do my edits, I export the ones I want to keep. I put them on the desktop, I throw them into Google Photos, which is where I store all of my photos. I do have a backup hard drive, so I keep a copy of all the RAW files, all the JPEG files, and then all the developed files. And sometimes I use, I have the Nik collection from DxO as well, and that's been helpful to edit photos. But basically, I have all of those organized by I do it by month, but a collection of photos around a particular theme. And then on my folder I have a folder on my desktop every month that I just throw the photos I'm going to be using for that theme. I throw them into that folder, and then I save that into Google Photos once the month is done. So I did that this morning for the month of March, and now I created a new folder for April. So
awesome. Because as someone who hasn't been in doing photography full time, I'm probably, out of the three of us, I'm probably the one with the least experience or the least amount of years. And so for all new photographers, it gets really easy to lose track of all the files you have. You could have quadruple of the same photo stacked around your computer, and before you know it, you're running out of space. So it took me some time to get a nice little strategy going where I can store my photos correctly. And I found that as soon as you're done doing whatever you're doing, whether it's street photography or just shooting around the house or working with a client, I try to store them immediately, name them immediately, and store them away on my computer, so this way that's out of the way. I don't have to worry about doing it later. And it can get really difficult if you let it go in the beginning. And that, I'm really, really certain that happens to a lot of people who get a camera for the first time, especially a digital camera, where all you need is a big memory card and you can just go shooting away.
Yeah.
Before you know it, everything is all over the place, and you're looking for a specific photo, and you're digging through thousands of photos, and that's the worst.
That's right.
What about you, John?
What do you do?
What do I do? Well, here's the thing. I started out as a film photographer in the late 80s, and then I went to grad school, and I became a photojournalist, and we were still shooting film until the late 1990s. So we would basically cut up our negatives. We pretty much shot color negative stock, put them in a sleeve throw them on a light table, get a loop out, look at each individual negative, think in reverse as far as what the tonality and the content was, and then we would go into a Kodak 2035 film scanner, bring it up on the computer with Adobe Photoshop, whatever it was, 3, maybe 1. Before there were things like layers and all that fun stuff. And then we would sit down with our editors, print something out as sort of a black and white Xerox with a caption below it, and then it would eventually go to pre-press, and then it would go to press. Wow. So, you flash forward to the late 1990s, we were getting digital cameras. They were usually 1 or 2 megapixel. So it was a much more basic kind of image, but it was good enough for newsprint because newsprint is the equivalent of throwing ink at toilet paper going 30 miles an hour in press. So resolution-wise, by the time it went through the rasterization and the half-screen process, you wouldn't know the difference if the image was going to be breaking up or not. And that still holds true to today. So we were morphing from film to Photoshop, and with digital we were starting to introduce new kinds of processes, still using Photoshop, but no longer needing to scan an image. It kind of cut out that extra step. And we eventually used things like Camera Bits, Photomechanic to do our editing. And then from that culling process, we'd pick a couple images to sit down with our editors with. And by that point, we'd go through Photoshop and do some basic edits, but nothing dramatic because we weren't going to change the content of the image. It was photojournalism. We had to be really careful about going too far with that, with the dodging and burning and all that, and the touching up. Yeah. We had to keep it real, basically. So, and then it was archived. So newspapers and magazines have pretty fancy archiving. Now you can get it for pennies on the dollar of what it was. Yeah. We were using Extensis Portfolio and that sort of thing. And then we switched to a system that the Associated Press was using for archiving. So we could do a keyword search. So that has been going on for at least 20 years now. That process hasn't really changed since then.
Nice.
Yes, so, great. Wow.
Speaking of Photoshop, John, I'm sure it's easier now to to edit a digital photo than it was back then. But since you had to deal with both, what's your preference? Do you prefer the, Lightroom, for example, in the current state of digital photography, or do you miss the old days of dodging and burning?
Well, I think with a lot of things in photography, when a question's asked, the answer becomes it depends. Yeah, so if I'm photographing something that involves a mass production of final results, a lot of photos for delivery, I might use something like Lightroom. Now I'm starting, especially for my portrait work, and especially if I'm tethering something, I'm going to switch over to Capture One, because I find that the color rendering is a little bit more broad. The gamut representation is broader, and luckily Capture One has caught up to all these other cameras. So at first, this Danish company was basically catering their software towards their phase one cameras, because that's all one kit and caboodle. But I'm sure they eventually realized, well, there's this whole other market, and some of these other things compete with our products, but we have to please a lot of people at the same time. Mm-hmm. So they ventured into supporting these other brands, and most recently Fuji. So that's pretty exciting, right?
Yeah. That's what I used, Capture 120.
Mm-hmm. So that was the version I bought over the holidays, and that's the version I'm learning on right now.
So Jeffrey, are you using Capture One, or you haven't jumped into that yet?
I haven't. I've been a Lightroom user. I guess my preference there is it's non-destructive, meaning I can always go back and back out of whatever I have done, and I do that. I have purchased a series of presets that I have, so I have favorites, of course, of those, and I apply those depending on whatever type of photography I've done. But I've become increasingly more familiar and confident in using Lightroom. I'm by no means an expert, but I do like the tools there. I did use ON1 at one point in time, which was good. It really had a major upgrade, and I enjoyed that very much. But I just, for whatever reason, just maybe because of Adobe, and it seemed to be the standard that many people had used, I gravitated toward that. I will say I do store my photos in Google Photos, and they have just a small suite of editing tools, but I do find I do little touch-ups and things with those as well.
Snapseed is not bad.
No, it's not. I'm really happy with that. So between the two, and I mentioned also the Nik collection, which used to be owned by Google but was bought by the French company DxO, and I do have that. I particularly love their Silver Effects. If you really want to touch a black and white photo, it's outstanding, and I'm really keen. So I do use that as well, but I haven't ventured too far beyond any of those.
Currently, if you've heard of Affinity, I believe it's Affinity Photo. It's a photo editor, and they have a lineup of editing software. Right now, if you purchase it for the iPad, I'm assuming it might work on an iPhone. I'm not sure, but it's $9.99. I believe it's 50% off.
Wow.
So, from what I heard, it's a pretty good piece of software, and it has similar functions that come with Photoshop. So, you basically have 2-in-1 instead of jumping between Lightroom Mobile and Photoshop Mobile. I believe you could do everything in one shot. So I was thinking of using that as my mobile editing software because I use Capture One, and unfortunately they don't have a mobile app. So whenever I'm out and about and I want to edit a photo on the fly, I got to either use Snapseed or Lightroom. But with Lightroom, because I don't pay the fee, I could only edit JPEGs.
Right.
So I have to convert it into a JPEG, and then so it's a lot of work. So the convenience of Lightroom Mobile, especially, was a big reason why I didn't jump into Capture One right away. But once I tested out the demo, and I saw how it's just something different, as John was stating. There's something different when you're editing, specifically. Well, when you're using Capture One for a specific brand, but when you're editing with Fuji, there's just something different about it that you notice after you're done editing, and that's why I jumped into it, because especially with the GFX, there's just something to it that you get so much out of it, and that's why I decided, okay, I'm going to pay the one-time fee, and I don't have to continue paying a monthly rate, and I have more control over my files.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the allure of Affinity, because Affinity also has a one-time fee set up.
Yes.
And it's extremely affordable, as you mentioned. I got it for my iPad Pro a couple years ago.
Oh, okay. How do you like it?
I think it was about $20, and I liked it a lot, and I need to try it more. But the rationale behind getting it was I was on a trip where I didn't want to bring my laptop, but I still wanted to have the creative control of something robust like Photoshop.
Yeah.
And or Lightroom. It did the trick. And the other fascinating thing about it was I could use my tablet like a Wacom tablet. I could get a stylus out and I could finesse it and have so much more dexterity with the adjustments I was making to, especially with touching up skin and that sort of thing. It made it a lot easier for touching up images.
Yeah, and I saw somebody stitching photos with Affinity, and I think you can only do that with Photoshop. Mm-hmm. So the fact that he was able to do that right there and then, and also, I forgot the name, it just went right by me, but photo stacking as well. he stacked all his images right through Affinity. So I was like, wow, this is a pretty powerful piece of software that you could do a lot of things for $10. So I was like, I'm really torn up as to whether I should buy it or not. Because my thinking is, I don't need it right now because I'm home, and that goes for a lot of us. So I'm sure once everything goes back to normal, the prices are going to go back. And as the three of us were sharing links last week, various websites, various services are giving away a lot of their services, their learning tools for creatives. So that is, so admirable, and hopefully a lot of people take advantage of it. And so if you shop around on your favorite app stores, you're going to see a lot of sales currently going on, or maybe even extended trial offers. I've seen 90-day trial offers for, I think, the Adobe suites, which are pretty expensive. I think Final Cut Pro, I believe, might be an Adobe suite, part of that.
That's actually a Apple product.
Oh, it is? I think I saw a 90-day trial for that, too, which is expensive, but it's so in-depth.
Adobe might have Premiere on sale.
Yes,
but I know
that's what it is, Premiere, yeah.
I know they've had an offer for over a week where people can get, I believe it's several months of free cloud. What people are ending up doing is they're canceling their subscriptions, getting the deal, and when things hopefully blow over, they just reinitiate their subscription or a new subscription. So it's good. There's so many choices out there. So where do you begin? And I think you pretty much have to begin from asking yourself, what are my needs? What do I like to look at? What do I like to photograph? And then work your way back from there.
Yeah, kind of do what Jeff was talking about earlier. Come up with a theme and then build around that theme, and this way you can narrow down exactly what you need. Because, John, as you stated, there's so much out there for creatives that, and it's such a great thing that these companies are doing, because a lot of us are in hard times right now because of this particular crisis. So, big companies are doing all they can to help people out, which is great to see.
I would just add, and I think both of you highlighted this. I mean, I think this whole, regardless of the technology you use to edit your photos or store them, I think it's just having a plan for how you're going to handle them. So you've gone out taking photos, you take out your SD card, and now what? What is your next step? What do you want to do to ensure that you both preserve it and know how to access it, whatever tool set you use? So I know both of you, I'm sure, have a workflow in mind of how I'm going to go back and get those photos or access them or edit them or whatever. But I think it's just having a plan and allowing them the tools to be a part of that journey, from how you get from taking the photo to actually retrieving it in the future or accessing it wherever you want to view it and want to edit it, kind of thing. So, for anybody who might be listening and thinking about it, it's just coming up with what are those steps that work for you. And there's a lot of nuances in there of how folks handle those things. I have a process that I use, which is, I'm sure, quite different than the two of you, but at least I know how to go back and get them or edit them or display them, in
tag them, tag them under a certain name,
Right.
When I tag this podcast, I tag it under cheese. So.
Right.
What were we going to say, John?
Oh, I think the key is just to kind of find your own way too. That there's a lot of information out there, and don't always compare yourself to other people.
That's
like we were talking about. Figure out, because I think somebody once said, comparison is the thief of joy. I think it's great to be inspired by what everybody else is doing, but I also find gratification from trying to figure out what I want to say with the camera. And right now, for some people, this might be a lemon to squeeze, that some of us might have a little bit extra downtime to think about what we want to say with our photography. How we want to forge our vision, and what tools we might want to bring to bear to do that.
Yeah, great point. And I've been posting old photos that I went back and I said, all right, now that I have Capture One, let me re-edit them and use some of the things I've learned between now and the time I took those photos, which they go back as far as 3 years. So, as you stated, John, we have extra time in our hands, so we can use that time to hone our skills. Now, one thing I wanna say before we leave is that most of us have smartphones, and if you're not into photography, now's a good time to pick up that smartphone and start documenting what's currently going on at home, because we're living in a moment that is historic, and people are going to look back 10 years from now and ask us, how did we deal with this? Mm-hmm. So document everything you can with your smartphone, create your own styles, because those photos are going to be very important in the coming years. And it's a good way through social media to share them with your loved ones who you can't see because they're locked away too. So share those photos with your loved ones, with your friends. And one thing they told me when I saw several doctors regarding my head injury, and one of the things they say is continue to do your hobbies so that your brain is dealing with patterns and thinking ahead of time, learn a new dance, so on and so on. Unfortunately, a lot of us who have hobbies like mountain climbing or fishing, we can't do that right now. So think of something you can do at home. Mm-hmm. My opinion, photography is perfect. You have a smartphone with a great camera already. You're documenting your life. You're sharing them with your loved ones. Some grandparents can't see their grandkids, so on and so on. So there's a good way to share and for at least a few moments allow people to forget about what's currently going on, because regardless of how much we try, it's getting harder and harder to forget about what's going on. It's because for a lot of us, it's getting closer and closer to people that we know or people that we love. So just do that, and that's why I'm using this platform to try to share what I can.
Yeah. Great.
And of course, I have two great guys with me that are great at doing that as well.
Well, you're an enabler.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I've been called worse. Let me stop.
There you go. One of the other things, I'll just add this because I totally agree and I appreciate what you just said, Jose, a lot. One of the things, picking the theme at home for April is, every day you walk by all your stuff in your house or outside in the yard, the garden, furniture. How do you look at it in fresh ways with new eyes and with creativity?
Yeah.
Try to figure some of that out. That's a challenge to me.
So a big challenge.
That's kind of what I'm focused on for the month, but you're also preserving a very delicate and difficult moment in history with your family, of course, so it's figuring out how do you do that, but also do it with fresh perspectives.
Yes.
And
yeah, you were talking about trying to look at things with a new perspective. It was funny. I had the shower going, and before I got in, I look at the soap, and then there's like a scrub on the side, and I freaking with my fingers, I squared it up, and I'm like, oh, that'll be a cool picture. So yeah, it's just because as we talked about, John and I, when we had Jans on, our minds are always racing and looking at things and composing them in the most inopportune ways. We're eating with our family, we're out with our friends. So now it's like, okay, now we could use that and make something out of nothing, basically.
Yeah.
I just don't have any clowns to chase right now.
Yeah, right. I know. Maybe we should create a service, rent a clown.
There you go.
Maybe I'll just imagine a squirrel as the clown and up the game a little bit. It might involve some climbing, so that's physical.
Yeah.
That's healthy.
There you go.
It'd be like Rocky 3 when he was chasing the chicken.
There you go. Exactly. Get down to my fighting weight.
So yeah, we appreciate everyone that listens to the podcast, and of course, appreciate John and Jeffrey hopping on during the evening hours when they could be spending time with their family. So thank you guys, and hopefully you guys have found the audience that is have found something in this particular episode that helps you out. So we're gonna wrap it up. Until next week, you guys take care, and we'll speak to you soon.